Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. So my goal for today is to get through like 4 of the books that I've read over the course of time that has been since like I last talked about books on this channel. So I think I have talked about all of the books that I read up and through the month of April. I will say there was one book in there that I haven't talked about publicly because it is published by St. Martin's Press, and like, with the boycott and things like that, I was just like, I don't need to talk about it publicly. If you follow me on Goodreads, you might see what it is because I'll like mark it as read, but I'm not gonna add any more information than that. So yes, I'm just gonna go through these in chronological order. I might like look off camera because I'm looking at my computer to see what I read because it's been a while since I've read some of these. But I've read some good stuff, so I'm excited to talk about these books. So the first one is The Quickening, Creation and Community at the Ends of the Earth, and this is a nonfiction book by Elizabeth Rush. So this is actually a really interesting one to start with because I really enjoyed my experience reading this book. I think I gave it like either a 3.75 or 4 stars on Storygraph, and I tried to like record a like review of this, but then I ran into like tech issues, and so I just that was like basically the last video I attempted to record before my little hiatus. But yes, this is a nonfiction book that is a combination of a story about Elizabeth Rush going to Antarctica while also talking about things like climate change and also talking about motherhood, which with my recent news, reading this book was kind of hilarious at the time that I did, because I read it at the point where I was technically pregnant, but I didn't know I was pregnant yet. And so I had like a lot of feelings about this book. Like if I could like show you guys the clips from that, I think it would just be hilarious knowing what I know now. So Elizabeth Rush had the opportunity to go on one of the excursions with a group of scientists to Antarctica in 2019. And so she is basically just like documenting the voyage. She's, talking to the people on the ship and trying to offer whatever help that she can, providing her observations about what it's like to travel to Antarctica and being able to see like an iceberg for the first time and all of these different things. And she also talks about like the scientific work that these specific people are doing, like the things that they are trying to gather and what this information is going to be used for and all of these different things, talking about like the mundane parts of being on this ship and things like that. But I wouldn't call this necessarily like a science book, like a science nonfiction book, because it feels also, it's like part about that and part about like her struggling with, or not, I shouldn't, it's a little bit of a struggle, like an internal struggle about the idea of motherhood and whether or not it is like ethical to bring a child into this world knowing about like the big like climate issues that are going on. And so I like was very drawn to this because this is 100% a conversation that I've had with my husband and or just like thought about myself, like the ethics behind bringing a child into this world and things like that. And so she like talks to a lot of people about this idea, and it's funny because like there are lots of scientists on this boat who are trying to learn as much as possible about how the earth is changing and how climate change is changing things and things like that, but they also have children and they don't like consider that as part of like the equation at all. But I 100% like understood where she was coming from. It's like, bringing a child into this world means that you are going to create more carbon emissions, like unintentionally, because people create carbon emissions and things like that. But then also like we have no idea what the future holds. And so there is like this nihilistic part of at least my brain that's like, am I just bringing a child into a world that's doomed? And like, am I forcing them to go through things? And, who knows what the future will hold for them and all of this stuff. And yeah, I just really appreciated this book for asking those questions and then kind of just seeing how she comes to terms with all of that stuff as well. So yeah, I think that if you're someone who like reads a lot of science and nonfiction and wants a book about like the scientific parts, this will partially scratch that itch, but it feels more on the memoir side of things, which is like what I personally like. And so that's part of the reason why I was really drawn to it. And yeah, I honestly thought it was really interesting. Like, I thought it was a good balance between information about Antarctica and the scientific work that they're doing, combined with her getting to know all of the different people on the ship and like creating friendships and stuff like that, and talking about the difficulties of being on the ship for such a long period of time and away from your family and friends and your home. And also just the struggle with motherhood and things like that. It does jump around in time a little bit, so you get to know like different details about different parts of her life along the way and things like that. But yeah, I overall really enjoyed this book. I feel like I haven't really heard a lot of people talking about it, but it was like nominated, I think, for a Pulitzer. So yeah, if it wasn't a book on your radar, I feel like it's a book that should be on more people's radar. Next, I have Against the Loveless World by Susan Abulhawa. Yeah, I'm really bad at this. So this is a book that I've had on my radar for quite some time, and you know, it gets brought up a lot when people are talking about reading books by Palestinian authors and things like that. And so I've been wanting to pick this book up, finally got a chance to. This is a fiction book, and you are following this character named Nahir, who at the beginning of the book is in solitary confinement in prison. And she is basically just reflecting on her whole life and how she got to the point of where she's at, and kind of like telling her own story to herself while she's in solitary confinement. She was born in the 70s to Palestinian refugees, born in Kuwait, and spent a decent amount of her time there. She, you know, dreams of like falling in love and opening up her own beauty salon and things along those lines. And like one day she ends up getting married to a man who ends up just kind of leaving her, and she has to like deal with that and like the stain that puts on her and her family, while also her family is on the brink of poverty, and she ends up putting herself in really difficult and dangerous situations in order to help provide for her family. And just a lot happens in this book. This is a book that took me a really long time to read, not because it isn't good, but because it was just really heartbreaking to read. And, you know, emotions were at a high during this time as well. So there were times where I would like read a chapter and I'm just like, I just can't read anymore right now. And I would put it away for a while. But I think that it does such a great job of like explaining this specific point of view, and it's a point of view that very rarely gets shared. It even like talks about the fact that like journalists come to try to speak to Nahir while she's in solitary confinement, and they all have an agenda as well with her story, and they like twist the things that she's saying, or they like are taking parts of her story and trying to put it through a very specific viewpoint to help their own agenda and things like that. And it's not just like Middle Eastern journalists who are doing this. It's, you know, German journalists and European journalists who are coming to speak to her as well. So it was just like a very well done story. There's a lot, again, that happens over the course of her lifetime. And so there are parts where my own interest might ebb and flow just because of how engaged I was with what was happening at that certain point in time. I think that the main character is just an extremely flawed woman who is trying to do the best that she can for herself and for her family. And you see her making decisions that you might not necessarily agree with, but the author does one of the things that I enjoy so well is that you might not agree with the decisions, but you completely understand where she's coming from and why those choices were made. So yeah, this is a really great book. Again, another one that like if you hadn't already planned on reading this book, I think that it's worth picking up. It does jump around in time a little bit and jump around between a couple different places. But I think that it does a great job of providing this perspective of the Palestinian experience living in the Middle East. All right, next up is a book that I know that a lot of people are going to be very excited that I finally read, and that is My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. This is a book that obviously has so much hype and so much love behind it, so I don't feel like I need to talk about it too much. but this is the first book in the Neapolitan Quartet, and you are mainly following the friendship between these two women, Elena and Lila, and you are literally following them through the course of their entire lives, it seems like, with this quartet. So the this one starts in the 1950s in Naples, and you get to see literally just like everything from their background to their schooling, their friendship, even though it seems like to me a very toxic friendship at times and things like that, up and through their teenage years and things like that. So this is a book that I found at a used bookstore, and so I picked it up because I was like, everyone raves about this, I need to give it a chance. And I ended up reading this because of TBR Spin, which I'm not really keeping up with anymore. But this was for whatever the month was where you had ChatGPT pick one of your books for you. So it picked this one. This is a book that in the beginning I had a hard time with. I just wasn't really getting into the story. I wasn't really enjoying the friendship. Like, to me, this doesn't feel like a friendship in this book. Like, they have moments where they are kind and loving to each other, but they also just have like a really complicated relationship with each other, which, maybe some people have friendships like that as well, and so I just haven't experienced that. But yeah, I was just having a hard time with this in the beginning, and I went on Goodreads because I was like, let me see what, especially like the people that I know, what they like say about this book. And a lot of people said like you have to wait until about like the 50 to 100 page mark to really feel like you're hooked into the story, and I would kind of agree with that. It feels like the first 50 to 100 pages are just background, like you are getting someone's full life story, and so those early years are just context for things that happen later. And it isn't until like they grow up a little bit and they get to like their teen years that things really start happening and things start changing in their lives in a really dramatic way that feels more engaging. So yeah, in the end, I think I gave this like a 3.5, 3.75 stars. It's probably one of those books that will probably feel better as I go further into the quartet series and I get more connected with the characters and the things that happen in their lives and stuff like that. By the end, I was like, okay, I can kind of see why people are enjoying this. But I can also see very much why people would have given up on this, because like if I didn't have other people to prompt me that I needed to just like commit to it, I don't know if I would have, just because of like the stage of my brain and stuff like that lately. I have a hard time finishing books, and so if you are also in that state of brain, this might not work. But if you're willing to like stick it out for those 50 to 100 pages, I think it's worth it, and I definitely will be like picking up more of the books as I like come across them and things like that. I'm not in a rush to read them, but it's definitely like on my list of like, as I'm at used bookstores, if I see the next ones in the series, I definitely want to pick them up. All right, and the final book that I am going to talk about is The Postscript Murders by Elly Griffiths. This is a book I picked up kind of on a whim. I was going on vacation and I just wanted something like quick and light and fun and stuff like that, like a good summer read sort of situation. And I had read the first book in this series called Stranger Diaries last December, I think it was, and I really enjoyed that one. And so I was like, let me pick up book 2 in the series, and my library had it available, so that made it easy. So in this book, it begins with a like 90-ish year old woman in assisted living passing away, which isn't that uncommon, or like nothing suspicious there. But one of the caretakers for this woman is like kind of cleaning up in the room and things like that, and she notices that like the woman who passed away, named Peggy, is like has all these like crime books in there, and some of them are like dedicated to her and all of these different things. And while she's cleaning up, a gunman comes in and actually takes one of the books and runs away. And so she decides to escalate this to the local police department, specifically Detective Corps, just talking about that, like, it doesn't seem like this was just like a normal natural death, that something suspicious is going on, and things kind of just like escalate from there. So yeah, like I said, this is just something I picked up because I wanted something kind of light and fun, and a good mystery like will keep you engaged and stuff like that, and this definitely did that. It's a really fun book. I definitely think it's a book for book people, because it talks a lot about like crime novels. They go to like a book festival and stuff like that. There's just like a fun group of characters in this one as well. There is the caretaker, and then there is this guy who like owns and runs a coffee shop, and then one of the other older people who live in like the assisted living facility also gets involved and stuff like that. And so it's like this quirky cast of characters who are all doing this sort of like amateur sleuth thing, while Detective Core is also trying to investigate things and stuff like that. And so it's just kind of fun seeing how everything kind of unfolds, and it unfolds in really interesting ways. I think that like there's a lot of really fun surprises that don't feel, they're not like crazy twists or anything like that, but there's like interesting reveals about the characters that add to the complexity of the story that's being told in a really nice way. So yeah, I'm really enjoying Elly Griffiths. I feel like she's a new to me author that I can like enjoy in terms of mysteries, because like lately I haven't been reading as many mystery books, and so she feels like a nice one that I can kind of turn to when I'm in the mood for like a really classic mystery book. So yeah, that's everything I have for this video. I'm going to be saving the other books that I've read for another video. I'm hoping, again, to just get these out when I can. But I will say, assuming that I can get another one out, the next one will have 2 of the books that will definitely be in my favorite books of the year. So you can all look forward to that. So yeah, leave a comment down below letting me know if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were on them. Or if you have any questions or anything along those lines, feel free to leave that down in the comment section as well. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.